Good evening and welcome to today's Tropics for June 2nd, 2022. Please note, I'm not a meteorologist and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storm I'm talking about. And for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or the National Weather Service office. So today I'm looking at potential tropical cyclone 1. It's a very messy system in the very northern reaches of the Caribbean, trying to get into the Gulf of Mexico. And yeah, it's very sloppy. We've got kind of an LLC trying to get going here, northeastern Yucatan. The problem for it is it's definitely not classifiable. It's too broad. It's very elongated, kind of northeast to southwest. And so, yeah, we had recon going earlier, actually. It didn't really find much that we didn't really know already as to whether there's, maybe an LLC further east in the convection. It just looked like this is the main game in town. And yeah, it's definitely not classifiable, so it is potential tropical cyclone, not quite a tropical cyclone yet. However, we have had some convective activity toward that northwestern lobe of the lobe. So, we can get it to keep going there, keep some convective activity over parts of that LLC. Maybe we'll see something try to get going, become more concentrated, become something that looks more like an actual tropical cyclone. At the same time, you also notice kind of getting into the Gulf of Mexico here. Here's the mid-level center. So if you kind of compare the two locations of the low-level center and the mid-level center, you can see they're very far apart from each other. So they're very decoupled. And that makes sense because there is quite a bit of westerly shear coming through the area. And so that's going to try to make them decoupled. And that's what's happening so far. And it really isn't surprised that with the mid-level center so far east, because the convection has been out, basically out in the Caribbean all day, well to the east of the kind of low-level center that's trying to get going over the Yucatan Peninsula. What's causing this? Well, there's an upper-level trough that's over the Gulf of Mexico, and this is causing some of that westerly shear into the area where PTC 1 is right now. And so that's keeping it sheared. It will continue to be sheared, but the shear may be able to become divergent enough so that it's not as unfavorable as it could be. Looking a bit forward into tomorrow morning, you can see, there's that upper level trough pushing some bit of westerly shear into where PTC 1 is, but there is a decent amount of this upper level divergence, and that will probably allow some convection to keep going given that the upper divergence usually causes rising air. And even though it will be sheared, and that might entrain some of the drier western Gulf of Mexico air into the system, the upper level divergence might allow it to actually strengthen slowly, but still strengthen as it heads towards Florida. Now, as it passes Florida, we kind of have a divergence in the model camps right now. GFS tries to strengthen it, but it weakens it eventually. You can see it's not a very healthy looking system right here. You've got a very intense convective burst right here northeast of the center, and you can you tend to see maybe something try to get going over there instead of where the actual center is. So then you'd probably have competing vortices and a very messy system as it moves up to the northeast. And so this would be a pretty disorganized system, very sloppy, not that strong. So this is kind of like the weaker sort of look. But then we have the Euro model, which also has a generally sheared. You can tell that there's not really much over here. There's a lot of dissipation, convective activity to the northeast. That's a pretty clear sign that you do have some southwesterly shear. You can tell it's generally close to the center. It's centralized reasonably well around this around here. So that's a sign that there's at least something that's generally trying to get organized rather than the GFS, which is basically a lot of the main activity to the northeast and not in an organized fashion like the Euro model, instead of trying to perhaps spin up something down shear. So let's see what happens. This is basically based on how strong this subtropical jet behind PTC1 is, and how well coupled it is to this area of upper divergence in the right entrance region of the of a jet streak. So what the Euro does is it keeps the main low pretty close to this favorable area where you get a lot of upper divergence and something that would favor, perhaps sheared system, but a strengthening sheared system, and that will allow it to keep strengthening even though it's not a very favorable tropical environment. However, the GFS is very different, and it kind of keeps this back a little, and it also has a stronger subtropical jet here. And so what you get is a more sheared system, even accounting for the northeastward movement cancels out some of this westerly shear. There's still a good bit of shear, and that upper divergence in that right entrance region, it's not quite coupled with a low. So what you get there is you get something to the northeast trying to get going instead of the main low. That's exactly what the GFS shows here. And so you'd get like kind of two competing lows, perhaps, and just very messy system instead of something that's perhaps maybe a bit more organized like the Euro says. We have some time to watch, and it's not really a major consequence because there may be some rain for the coast depending on how far northeast or northwest or southeast it tracks. After it passes Florida, it's not going to be a major threat to land. So as for the track, we have a good idea of the general steering pattern, not so much of the exactly where it's going to go. Even once it gets in the low center, it's going to be hard to tell where this the low is going to go, just because it isn't the usual tropical cyclone in that it won't be that well organized basically the entire time. You're going to have a generally sheared system its entire life cycle that's going to be prone to maybe having the low redevelop down shear, which would cause trouble trying to figure out where exactly it's going. And even then, the exact track isn't really that important because it is going to be a lopsided system as a result of the shear. But in general, we're going to have a low somewhere in the Gulf, probably tomorrow morning. And from there, it's going to try to go to this weakness in the ridge, kind of troughing. And further down the line, once it crosses Florida, there's a lot of troughing up here in Canada, and the result of this is it kind of pushes down the westerlies down to the East Coast, and that's enough to catch a PTC1, and that will kind of start embedding it into the westerlies this weekend and probably push it out to sea. So looking at the official National Hurricane Center cone, you can see it is expected to strengthen a little bit into a tropical storm, so that would be the first named storm of the season, named Alex. And it's generally expected to pass over some part of Florida, maybe southern Florida, perhaps central Florida. It depends on where the low-level center actually sets up, and if it tries to relocate or something. But it does strengthen a little bit, and then it eventually peaks probably Monday as it's in that favorable zone before it starts getting too sheared and not really strengthening anymore from tropical processes. As for the impacts, the main impact is going to be rain, perhaps some gusty winds and embedded thunderstorms, but this is not a big wind system. So it's going to be mainly a rain system, and that is not unusual given that it is early June, and a lot of the time we get these weak, sloppy, sheared systems that are big rainmakers more than anything else. But kind of a clue to how it's going to be lopsided is where the tropical storm watches are set up. And you can see the northern extent of these watches. They're basically a little bit north of the system center. But you can see these tropical storm watches extend well to the south of these southeast of the center. Yeah, that's a pretty big clue of what's going to happen. The westerly shear is going to keep basically everything more to the south. So even if the system passes north of you, you might get the strongest impacts just because it's going to be lopsided and that convection is going to be not mostly over the center, rather pushed down shear the center. So as you can see, the cone here has it going a bit north of Lake Okeechobee here, but the main rain axis is way further south, kind of going through the Keys here and through Miami. So yeah, this is going to be your classic kind of lopsided storm, but given how much rain is expected here, like a large extent of 6 inches up here and possibly higher amounts in those embedded thunderstorms, there's definitely a real flooding risk from PTC1 as it passes through Florida. And as to where exactly this sets up, we'll have to see once we start getting it trying to actually develop. And so we'll see what happens, but be prepared for some flooding rains. And if you're not already prepared for the hurricane season, it is June 2nd, and this could be a warning sign for you just to be prepared. Even though this probably isn't much to worry about aside from some likely flooding in those flood-prone areas in southern Florida. If you have any questions or comments about my video, please let me know. Hopefully this wasn't too janky or weird because I do have a new recording set up right now, and hopefully I get used to that and before the meat season arrives. And there's not too much to talk about. Thanks for watching.